Okay, June 5th, 2023. Coming back from the gym. So, as I said, things have been a bit quiet. I've been focused on my project manager exam, and it seems like as far as things going in Ukraine, I don't know. We're having, like I said, we're having some air alarms, and things are. But I don't know. Life goes on. You know, they opened up the basketball court and football or soccer field in our apartment complex, and like I said, it's kind of a funny one because they have like AstroTurf, and then they have basketball hoops over the soccer goalposts. So, but I mean, the ball got some bounce. I made some baskets. Local kids got curious and they started making baskets and stuff. And you know, as I said, so there's more to life than just FIFA and football. There's also the NBA. But yeah, it was a good weekend. You know, so the mother-in-law is in town. That's been fun. It's more of a problem for Luda than me, I think. I mean, I just been so busy with studies and everything, and then there's a language barrier. So but it's all right. Everything is okay. You just get into a new routine, you know, roll with it. You know, so they're from way outside Lviv, and so this is like coming to New York for them, and it was a bit overwhelming, you know, but I think they're already, you know, it's like third day now, so they're getting used to it. Maybe they'll want to move here or something, you know. It's a nice city, you know, this life in Lviv. I mean, I don't know, it reminds me of when I lived in Kansas. There's no water nearby. It's pretty flat. I mean, there is like one hill with a TV tower on it. But I lived in Kansas when I did my bachelor's degree in engineering. I studied at Kansas State, and it was flat. It was just a town. You know, it had a main street. You know, there was some shopping mall, you know, out on the outskirts of town. That's what this Lviv reminds me of. It was a place called Manhattan, Kansas, you know, home of Kansas State University. Look that up. Lviv is, you know, Manhattan, Kansas had its own character. I mean, it didn't have the restaurants. You know, Lviv is like, I guess what makes this place unique is all the restaurants. But, you know, since the war started, a lot of that is, they've kind of converted to more drinking and burgers and stuff. We've lost a lot of the good food. One of the Indian restaurants closed down. There's this new one called Shalom that popped up. But the food is, I mean, it's good. I mean, I have to say this, but it's not Gordon Ramsay. They used to have some places that were on another level, you know, that I don't know if they were ever on that Michelin level. We didn't have any Michelin restaurants here, but there were their own things here. And now you have like these Georgian restaurants. They're like a chain of those, you know. Unfortunately, McDonald's is opening up near the house. I mean, yeah, life is going on. I mean, I know they're getting ready for this summer offensive, and as I talked about, if Ukraine can get that air power and get the ability to do the coordinated, you know, ground to air, you know, or, you know, air to ground coordination, you know, where you have the special forces on a radio calling in strikes for moving stubborn positions, and, you know, the planes are loitering above, you know, in a stack, and, you know, they can be dispatched. You know, maybe they can break through to Crimea. I mean, in the history, in the Crimean, you know, when there was when people were trying to take over Crimea, you know, they didn't have the air power, and the special forces coordination wasn't so advanced where you had the force multiplier effect, and that could really help if they can control the skies. They could probably get through that bottleneck. I mean, hell, there are going to be some busy EODs though, because it's going to be all heavily mined and everything. But if they can get in there and they can blow up that bridge, you know, so trap the Russians in there, or at least give them a chance to exit and then blow it up so it can't be resupplied. But it would be hard. It's like it's a really tough nut to crack. I mean, the whole geography of Crimea is, you know, but like I said, they can make the life there miserable. They can make it miserable, you know, for the Russians to hold it and make it costly. And that is kind of the strategy of the war now, is to just wear down the Russians, keep having them throw everything in here, turn all their tanks into scrap metal, and then starve out their economy with sanctions. And it seems like it's working. There's already stuff going on inside of Russia, and that's kind of what I wanted to get at, is there's a lot of things going bump at the night there. And I don't think it's the Ukrainians. I think it's separatist groups inside Russia, because Russia is like it's not as unified as people think. There's a lot of different groups there, and I was looking on YouTube. There's like 15. I was thinking it could be divided into 5 countries. It could realistically be divided into 15 countries. There's like 15 distinct groups of people in there. And maybe it could be divided on those ethnic lines, and they can be played against each other. So it's like North Korea. As long as Moscow and St. Petersburg can keep these periphery places happy, these places on the frontier, and keep them supplied with money and goods and whatever, then they're going to comply. But then you're going to have like these mayors or regional governors and stuff. They might start getting their own ideas, and then you have a lot of people in Russia, of course, who are not happy. Not everyone in Russia is drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean, here in Ukraine, it's a little bit unfair. Like anyone who's Russian is bad. Yeah, 70%, by the surveys, support Putin, but we have to really question those surveys, right? They might take 1,000 data points. So I think there's a lot more discontent in there, and if people have some reason, they will stop complying, and then it becomes like this exponential thing, like 1, 3, or 1, 2, 8, whatever, and just one person's unhappy, then all of a sudden 2, then 8, and then all of a sudden this whole thing topples. There's this so if people are, like in this Belgorod region, there seems to be some rebels there, and they're blowing stuff up, and they're taking advantage of the situation. The guy was on TV saying that this is he and his people's thing, and if they're not listening to the Americans, they're not listening to the Russians, he's just kind of doing what he wants, and yeah, that's I think there's going to be some of that. I think some of that's going to be happening where I think even some military units, I imagine, it would, of course, Voice of America is broadcasting and everything, and, we can't underestimate CIA and MI6 getting in touch with, people in the upper middle management, like the generals and the colonels to, maybe, rise up or try to take over their region. So there could be a fracturing, and maybe the West is afraid of this. The Western countries might be afraid of the fracturing of Russia, because they don't know what comes next, right? Like Putin is, whatever he is, he's a known quantity. I suppose the analysts say, that, and, the Chinese and the Indians can control him, apparently, that he's still referring to, Iran and all these other people, so they're at least like something known where if you get some rogue, like Chechen guy with some nukes, like Kadyrov holding nukes and stuff, and he's crazy. So it's like, do you dance with the devil you know or the devil you don't know? So that's probably why the West is holding back, because I think the West could topple Russia, just through some operations like this, like funding one of the regional leaders to fight against another one, or to shoot a nuke on Moscow or something, like done from an inside job. They could do that if they want. I'm pretty sure of it. I saw some YouTube video like Russia against America, and it was giving Russia too much credit that they would be able to shoot down some F-15s. I think as soon as NATO went against Russia, there would be like tons of psyops, psychological operations, telling those pilots, if you land your planes in Europe, we can fake your death and give you $1 million, and we'll just say that you were shot down. I think there would be like a mass defection of the Russian Air Force. I don't think that they would hang around and be annihilated. And I really don't think a Russian MiG-29 has a chance against an F-15EX after seeing what's happening here in Ukraine. I mean, a Russian MiG-29 can barely hold its own against a Ukrainian MiG-29, and both of them are like flying rust buckets. The Ukrainian ones have probably a little bit better electronics, but really these are old planes, and no one can top the Americans in maintenance and training. There's no way. I don't think the Russians would be able to get even close to an American fighter. So this simulation had showed that the Russians would start with a cyber attack, the Americans would retaliate, the Russians would cross into the European airspace and provoke something, and then their planes would get shot down. Eventually the NATO would take over Kaliningrad and use that as a bargaining chip to get a demilitarized zone, 60 miles into the Russian border from Ukraine. But it was giving too much credit to the Russians, how many casualties NATO would sustain. This what's going on here in Ukraine is like it's just a sampling of the U.S. Firepower, U.S. and Western European technology and firepower. I mean, it's like they have 3 Patriot stations, and that's basically, holding up the whole country right now. I mean, imagine if they had even 30, which is like nothing, So if the Americans opened up a Patriot factory here in Ukraine and they were putting out 5 or 10 a week, or America started ramping up production of these things and sending them over here and in Europe, I think the U.S. could shoot down all the nukes too. I really believe it, after seeing they shot down the hypersonic missiles with the Patriot and everything. And half of these Russian things I think are malfunctioning too. I don't think they're made well. I think the people working in the factories are drinking too much vodka or something. I mean, they're just not there with manufacturing. The Russians have really fallen behind. Their best and the brightest are like running like hell to Georgia and, have fled. The best and the brightest in Russia work in the IT companies, and I don't see too many really smart guys being Russian ideologues. Maybe there's a few of them, but I don't know. They can't materialize the technology. They are good in the theory. The whole theory of stealth aircraft came from a Russian guy in the Soviet Union, and he had wrote a book, and the CIA got a hold of that book in the 1970s, and before you knew it, they were developing the B-2 bomber. Was starting development under Jimmy Carter, I believe. I mean, the B-1 was like the first evolution of stealth technology. It wasn't true stealth, but they started employing some of the ideas and techniques. And the F-117 came out in the 90s, which means that thing was probably in development also during the era of Jimmy Carter. So, yeah, I think it's great Finland is in NATO. I think they just have to start like dumping weapons into Europe and Ukraine and point them all at Russia and give them a message. I mean, I think they can grab this Kaliningrad and Transnistria, and the Russians really couldn't do anything about it. They could work out a deal with the Chinese that they could get some part of Russia. They could convince the Chinese that, let's trade part of Russia for Taiwan and then we deal with that later. I don't know. But it seems like the Chinese and the Indians are kind of working behind the scenes to hold the Russians back from the nuclear thing. So I guess just push the limits. There's a lot more room to go. I mean, bring the F-16s here, train the Ukrainian special forces to call in these airstrikes, give those Russian rebel groups a little bit more money and, know-how. So, I mean, we don't want our weapons being traced inside Russia. I'm kind of for that too, that maybe they can learn how to, they have like this stuff made out of cellulose, like your fingernails. I don't know, it's like some protein, keratin or something. There is some material, like organic material, that can be used to make bomb casings and everything, and it disintegrates on impact. But I mean, I guess there's still residues and they can trace it, but it's pretty hard. It was in a Tom Clancy book even a long time ago. They talked about this. And they could probably, give them those kind of weapons and stuff to like just do sabotage, like Hogan's Heroes stuff, like blow up the railroads and blow up some supply depots and, even mess with the traffic lights, just psychological stuff with the people, like when they called all the taxis in Moscow at the same time to the center, just to let them know that they can be gotten over there to like turn the Russians against Putin, because that is going to have to be part of the calculus, is to create some internal uprising. so that it becomes like more worthwhile to take him out than to deal with him. But then again, we have to understand what comes after. I mean, do we get Kadyrov, or some, because I mean, I imagine, the grass is not always greener on the other side. It's just different. So that's a calculus the West has to play. But I don't know, if I was America, I would definitely be building up on Alaska, to be within and have ships off of, with the Japanese Navy off of the Russian coast, and go for the Sakhalin Islands, and, start putting Polish forces on Kaliningrad, Poland, and Lithuania, and start putting pressure. And then, I don't know, get Moldova annexed by Romania, so that it's part of Romania, and then we can put NATO in there, because they've only got like 1,500 guys, the Moldovans. I mean, for Moldovans, Ukraine is like some sort of America, like some superpower, so we've got to do something about that too. We can't be so passive. But there's a lot of room here, and I think that could be the summer offensive, just to position pieces and everything, and still keep the pressure on the Russians. But we have to have standoff weapons. They're losing too many people, I think. That's just my opinion. I mean, the CIA, CNN numbers, I'm kind of going off of that. But we need standoff weapons, and we not only need the weapons, we need the factories. And if any of you are listening to this and want to open your weapons factory here, and you need a general manager, give me a call. I will do it with pleasure. We'll open this factory, and we will turn Ukraine into another Texas. So that would be cool. That would be the Texas of Europe. I mean, that's instead of the star, it'd be the trident, the lone trident state. Something like that. But anyway, y'all take care. I got to go and study.